call me Crazy Joe, but now they can call me Batman.
What up? Welcome back once again to the Necro Zoo. I am Boom.
It's huge. It's really huge.
And in this one, let's go ahead and add 2 more figures to my McFarlane DC Multiverse collection. Now today we will be taking a look at the Kilowog and Rayner 2-pack. Now mainly I will be focusing on the Kilowog figure, as we have seen the Rayner figure a couple of times before. And the only main difference is that it is a more traditional darker green compared to the previous releases. Now a lot of people have been actually waiting for this set. Not really one of my most anticipated releases, but I am happy to have this Kilowog figure to add to the collection. And if you know me, I do not mind getting another version of the Rayner. The more the merrier. Now they actually don't look like poozers in the packaging, but let's go ahead and take a closer look at them. Now each one of these does come with a standard black DC Multiverse stamp. Now of course, these are not really needed, but sometimes they do come in useful. If you take a look at Kilowog's card, you have an image from the comics there. One thing people do not enjoy, this Kilowog is not your traditional comic styled Kilowog. You do know him from the comics as a sort of thicker character with a white trimmed costume and a very clean design, while this one is more stylized, a little bit leaner looking, and of course has the more modern textured costume. Now you can go 2 ways with this because of course we have seen classic Kilowog many times before, and when you really do think about it, I don't think they would actually be out there in space in PJs. Their suits would have a little bit of technology and texture to them, but that's just my opinion, so I do not mind this more stylized version of Kilowog. But hey, as we've seen, that doesn't necessarily mean that we'll never get a more comic styled version, as you have seen with the Hal Jordan and the new one coming from the digital wave. 2 very different versions of Hal Jordan. In fact, I should be getting that set very soon, and we will be taking a look at those. Now on the back, you do have some information. Now, as far as I know, Kilowog is from another planet. He's sort of a scientist, a geneticist, or like an engineer. I do kind of know a lot of this from reading Justice League Europe, where he was a sort of side character in some of the storylines. And when you actually see him in other forms of media, he kind of has that like old grizzled veteran sort of, drill sergeant kind of feel to him, which I always thought was pretty awesome. Now, surprisingly, for being a sort of mega fig figure, he does come with 2 accessories. He comes with this pretty sweet hammer construct, which has a lot of detail and design. And you do have some pretty cool lantern logos on it on either side, which is pretty nice. Pretty nice attention to detail. Sort of a meat tenderizer styled hammer. And usually with McFarlane, that would be, good enough as an accessory, but they did give him a, oversized Green Lantern battery. Now, it does look pretty nice and it does fit really well in his hand. But one thing I will say that I'm not a fan of, and that is that they didn't add any sort of Green Lantern symbol on here, which was kind of a letdown. I mean, I would have put it at least on top or maybe even in the front. But sadly, there is no sort of logo on it, although it was a nice effort from McFarlane, so we'll definitely hold on to this. way larger lantern than we have seen before. Now, let's go ahead and take a closer look at him. Now, I really do enjoy the added detail to a point. And just looking at it straight off, this is a pretty good representation of a Kilowog figure. Just looking at the main symbol, they did it very clean. And looking at just this middle part of the chest and logo, you can kind of get a feel of what a classic comic version of Kilowog would look like. But once you get out into the rest of the body, you could see all the added sculpt and detail, nice textures. The head fits really well with the body. Now, I have heard a lot of people say that this is a reuse of that big, beefy Beast Boy collectible figure, but I would have to disagree. I put them actually side by side, and apart from the trunks, which are the same piece, everything else is different. The torso, the abdomen, the arms, the legs, the feet, everything is differently sculpted than the way they were on Beast Boy. And although they may have followed the sort of body shape of that collectible figure, this is definitely its own mold. Now, I also did think at least they didn't reuse the Atrocitus book, which would have been very strange because that is a way leaner body proportion, way sleeker design. You can put them next to each other and see the differences. Kilowog being a little bit more thicker all the way around. So all in all, first impressions, I do really like this Kilowog figure. Not my favorite, but the more you have them in hand, of course, the better it feels. Let's take a look at that head sculpt. You got that alien styled traditional Kilowog head sculpt. What I do like is the way you can see his musculature and everything around his neck really fits well with the head sculpt. And they did actually add a little bit of dark wash around the mouth, around the eyes. You could see it a little bit throughout the head sculpt. Even the ears and the back of the head wrinkles have a little bit of wash on them, which is really nice. You do have those sort of jaw nodules that are, classic Kilowog style. Actually, the more I look at it, really, really nice job they did on the head sculpt and around the neck portion of the sculpt. You got a little bit of red eyes peeking through there in the shadows. Looks really, really good. Let's take a look at the articulation. He can look down. He can look up, but you do need to twist it a little bit to free it up. You got right to left. And of course, you could tilt his head for some attitude. Pretty awesome. We do have your basic McFarlane articulation. You got side to side at the waist, tilt-a-whirl, lower waist swivel, upper chest swivel. You can twist him, get him in some cool flight poses. He does have a very generous forward crunch. And of course, you could lean him back. Although you do get a slight gappage around the trunks, but you can articulate him to cover it a little bit so it doesn't get out of hand. Taking a look at the shoulders, you got that big old socket and ring bushing shoulder articulation, which gives you a lot of range and movement. You can actually get some up and down, front to back. You got a bicep swivel, single jointed elbows, which is basically standard on these larger figures, and straightening them back out. A lot of texture, a lot of cool design going down into these sort of forearm gauntlets. Now, what I do like is the way they designed these sort of circles that go around are actually designed in a sort of Green Lantern Corps logo. Pretty sweet. Now, of course, these hands articulate differently than from normal McFarlane figures. You only get the hinge and the swivel. But one thing that is pretty nice, On the left side, you do have a gripping hand, and on the other side, you have the same thing, but it does end in a pretty classic fist with a lantern ring. Now, I will say something that I did notice, and that is that if you look at the paint on the lantern ring, it is a sort of emerald metallic green paint. And I think this is what everybody would like to see, like on the whole figure. Kind of takes me back to that Dawnbreaker figure that McFarlane originally made that had that cool metallic green paint on him. Now, I'm pretty sure this is basically a cost thing where McFarlane wanted to add some, highlight to the ring. And for it to stand out, he made it that sort of really reflective green paint. But the costume is still in just your regular sort of forest green. And as always, that is basically coming down to cost. I would definitely like to see them use that ring green a little bit more. Easily get him in a T pose. Arms above the head. A lot of range there in the shoulders. Moving down, you got a little bit of thigh swivel, not too much. Kick up, kick back. The trunks are flexed. Pop out the knee. You got that McFarlane hip swivel. Double jointed knees, but really clunky that they're so thick that you don't really get a full bend out of them. But it is a huge, big Kilowog knee, so that's fine. Straighten them out, up and down at the ankle. Now you do not have your traditional right to left. As soon as you turn the foot, you get that ankle rocker without having any movement. So that's another thing that McFarlane does a lot with the mega figs. And you got toe articulation. Now we look at the lower body from here. Once again, as I said, there's a big difference between making your basic comic figures and what we actually have here in hand, which is a really stylized, sculpted out, has a sick sort of bead all over the costume, down into the boots that are really sculpted out nicely, but even the boots have a sort of grain to them and are designed really, really nicely. Take a look at him from the bottom. Not necessarily any tread, but he does have some identifying marks. Moving up the back, more of that beautiful sculpt work. Now, I did talk about earlier how this is not a complete reuse of the Beast Boy body, and you can see that here by the hinges on this guy for his knees are actually smooth. They don't have any texture because that is how it is designed. But if you look at the Beast Boy one, even the hinge has texture. So it is a completely different mold that was used to make these parts, separating it from the Beast Boy mold. Moving up the back, one thing I really like, and that is this huge sort of Bane-esque back that he has. You can actually see the musculature, even though he does have that piping lines and design all over the suit. But you could really see how hulking his back is, going into those vicious trapezius muscles.
I mean, you see his traps?
Right below the back of the head. And of course, finishing off, going back to the face only a mother could love, and that is your Kilowog figure. Now, I actually did have a lot of fun with this guy, taking photos. Really nice figure to move around. Of course, one thing I found interesting was that his left hand, the gripping hand, is really pliable where you can open it and close it without, a lot of force. And that actually allows you to get the hammer and the lantern battery into his hand fairly easily, allowing for a lot of options in figure photography. Now, I actually wanted to add something different, and I had two of these boxing glove, constructs with the lantern symbol on it. And I figured since I have two, I'll go ahead and mod one so that it will actually fit on the Kilowog figure. Had some fun with that. That's an added little detail that I added on my own there. But all in all, really satisfied with this Kilowog figure. A nice addition to the collection. Now, really quickly, let's take a look at the Kyle Rayner. He does come also with an alternate card for his character. It's pretty nice because it gives you an alternate card. But back you have information, which is pretty much standard. Now, he does come with a variety of accessories, which is an alternate gripping right hand that actually has the ring on it and is specifically designed for this version of Kyle Rayner in this 90s uniform. We'll hold on to that. You do have his, you know, lantern battery, and if you put it next to the Kilowog one, you can actually see the big difference in size. Now, these greens are a lot more of your classic lantern green. Even the costume that Kyle Rayner is in is a darker shade of green. Now, the original release lantern that came with Kyle Rayner is more of a sort of lemon lime green compared to this new one, which is more of just a regular lime jello green. But it is pretty nice to build your assortment of lanterns and constructs. Now, he also comes with some weapons. He comes with this big sword. Now, this is another reused weapon. It came in a lighter green before. So now we have a darker green version. And then, of course, we did get the sort of katana blade in construct form that actually matches up with the sort of samurai armor that we have seen before. But I always enjoy when we get pieces like this because this can actually, basically opening up your fodder box, for different parts that you didn't have before. So not a negative, definitely a positive. Now we have gone through the whole gambit of Kyle Rayner. Of course, originally they did give us this sort of pea green original costume Kyle Rayner with the white gloves. And of course, everybody was angry that we didn't get the 90s suit. Now, of course, McFarlane did correct this and he gave us the 90s suit. But then everybody was angry that it was the wrong color, it being more of like a pea green compared to this new release, which is definitely more of a traditional Green Lantern green. And we did actually get one more version of Kyle Rayner, which was the blue suit version. Standard releases from companies that have the DC license. We did see this in the DC Universe Classics. In fact, I have those figures behind me, right here. But once the blue version was released, a lot of people were angry that it wasn't Guy Gardner, which is actually, a character I would even like to see in figure form from McFarlane. So, actually, pretty nice little set of Kyle Rayner figures here. One for every occasion. You can put them in different teams. You can use them in different, setups for figure photography, which is always nice. But I am actually very satisfied with these figures. Now, if you're not a Lantern fan, it's definitely not a must have. But of course, I enjoy having one of everything from McFarlane's DC Multiverse. But, anyways, that's pretty much it. Definitely, you guys should make up your own decision if you want to pick up this 2-pack. Maybe you can wait down the road and get it at a cheaper price. But we do remember what ended up happening with the Doomsday 2-pack, which is very hard to pick up now on the secondary market. But one thing I'll always say, keep hunting out there, keep collecting, keep customizing, and I will see you on the next one.
They used to call me Crazy Joe, but now they can call me Batman.